that intelligence equals wisdom. AI has knowledge, but humans have judgment. AI isn't wise, it's knowledgeable. We need to be able to use our wisdom. Humans are not being replaced, that we're always going to be needed. It's just going to be required that we know a little bit more and are able to be more adaptive to what's going on. What got us here to this job isn't going to get us there in this new AI world. And so what minor adjustments do I need to make? What minor skills do I need to learn so that I can survive in this work? The perception amongst leaders and organizations is that AI is going to eliminate the bias. But all AI is based on the data that is given, right? And if it's garbage in, garbage out, so to speak.
Correct.
And so if you use that example of Amazon with the resumes, they had fed it years and years worth of what resumes they'd accepted.
Hello again, this is Welcome 10X AI, the show where we explore how AI doesn't replace people, rather amplifies them. So I'm your host again, Julius Neal, and we have here Patrick Dickerson. He is organizational development leader, consultant, and have 20 years of experience in real estate. Now he is going to talk about transition of organizations from traditional framework into AI. Patrick, can you introduce yourself to our listeners and viewers?
Yes, Julius, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. It's a pleasure to be on with you and so excited to help share some insights that I hope people will realize a need for as we jump into this AI realm. As you mentioned, I do work in the organizational and leadership space. I'm a speaker, trainer, and consultant in that regard, and have worked with that for a number of years, helping people align their mission and vision and values with their leadership goals and such. Recently, I've noticed that there's been a shift taking place where companies and organizations are trying to embrace AI, which is not a bad thing, but they're doing it at an accelerated pace to the point where they're not aligning their AI strategy with their culture and their mission and vision and values. And so it's creating a disconnect within the organizations and within their leadership. And leaders are falling behind because they're not rising to the level of the education necessary to lead in an AI world. And so I have developed what I call the human advantage framework, which will allow leaders and organizations to align their AI strategies with their organizational and leadership goals.
Yeah, you talk about this, the human advantage. So what does that mean in a world where AI is accelerating rapidly?
Well, I feel like the human advantage really focuses on soft skills and, those things like empathy and communication and basic leadership skills and those type of things. And so I've really broken it down into 4 things. I call them the 4 intelligences of character, connection, creativity, and cultural intelligence. And these are skills that machines can't replicate. A machine might be able to interpret data, but it doesn't feel empathy and it doesn't feel passion. There's no emotion behind that. And so we need to focus on the human advantage as part of that so that we keep humans at the forefront of what's going on. And is here to help, but it's not here to replace. It'll amplify what we're doing, but we need humans to interpret the tools. For example, we can use AI to interpret data, for example, but then we need humans to make the decision of what to do based on that interpretation. If we allow the machine to make all those decisions, there's going to be breakdowns.
And you mentioned about earlier when we were talking about the organizations, you found that gap, right? That the technology is fast evolving and that the organization is still the same. So there's a gap between that. And for when you come into an organization, how do you usually start the conversation that, okay, AI is good, but there's a big gap between your current status right now and your goal or your KPI for the year?
Great question. They'll look at it and go, most companies, just because they're trying to stay current, are adopting AI without putting in strategies of how to do it or why it even aligns with what they're doing. And so they're really, if I could put it, they're embracing speed over substance, if I was to put it that way. And so we'll talk to them about that, and then I will install those intelligences that I talked about, the character, the connection, the creativity, things to help them focus on the soft skills necessary. we'll break down and say, okay, what AI tools are you using? And have them explain that. And then I'll say, how does that align with your mission and vision and values of the company and the organization? And not only that is, what are you doing to make sure that your employees don't feel like they're being replaced? Because that's one of the biggest fears right now with AI is these companies and these employees feel like they're being replaced. And that's where there's a major disconnect, because we can use AI to amplify what we're doing, but never replace, because the humans add that human component that's necessary in order for organizations to succeed.
Then you mentioned about this AI replacing the people. So it's very difficult for organizations now to have that buy-in from the employees themselves, because if we are going to implement this AI, more or less they're going to replace me. How do you address that at that level? Of course, it's very easy to explain it to the executive level or for the management level, but for the frontliners, how are you going to communicate that to get that buy-in from them?
Well, we tell the leaders that communication is key. So when you're implementing an AI policy, in order for you to get buy-in from your team, you need to tell them the why. I mean, Simon Sinek has a great book out there, Start With Why. And, we need to tell them the why behind it. So we tell organizations and leaders, okay, if you're going to implement this, not only do you need to align it with your corporate strategy and your vision and values and such, but you also need to get buy-in from your team. And you need to tell them, we're going to use AI not to replace you, but to augment your skills and allow you to take your skills to a next level. Now, that may require you to upskill a little bit, but we're not here to replace you. We're here to help multiply you and use AI. So it's more of a team. It's a if-and situation where we can put both together and use them, for example. It's okay if we use AI to sift through resumes, for example, and help find out some of the best candidates. But then we need a human to look at that and say, okay, what have we missed? Because maybe your AI data has been looking at resumes, and the information you fed that AI data is based off of years in the past. And maybe a majority, Amazon had an example of this, where they used an AI tool and all of a sudden they had some problems because AI was recommending all males to hire. And the realization was that, all the data that they fed their AI tool was hired mostly males. It wasn't intentionally biased. It just happened. But that's the failure. They relied on AI to make those decisions and didn't rely on the human component to do it. And so this is where you tell your employees, okay, human resources, we're going to help you a little bit. We're going to get you to get buy-in on this, because we're going to eliminate some of the tasks you have with trying to weed through tons of resumes and applications. But then we need you to look at the recommendations and the data that AI has provided and made the ultimate decisions. And when you show them that, they're not here to replace them. The AI is not replacing them. It's augmenting them and multiplying them. Then they're much more likely to buy into what you're doing. But it all starts with the communication.
Yeah, it's in most of the organization I had also before, it's always about communication, and it's been a problem of a lot of organization, and still existing problem currently right now. So do you think AI will be once the AI systems are already in place, do you think the communication will get better, because there will be a little more transparency between between departments, between superior and then direct reports? What do you think about it?
I see it as a two-edged sword. Yes, the short answer is yes, the communication can be better. But the problem I find, even pre-AI stuff, that organizations tend to exist in silos. And what I mean by that is you have all these teams within the organizations who feel like they're mini organizations in and of themselves. I did some consulting for a financial exchange company, for example. And their technology department refused to communicate with their sales department and vice versa. So the sales department was writing software tools for itself instead of using the technology department to do it. And, it was almost like they were competing with each other. So as long as these organizations and the teams within the organizations are aligned with a mission and vision and values, they know where they're going, then they're much more willing to communicate, and they don't look at each other as competition. but rather playing on the same team, rowing in the same direction. And so as long as that's happening, the communication will get easier, and certainly AI tools can help accomplish that. But again, you need to invest humans into that equation to make sure that they're making the right decisions based on data that's coming and the communication tools that are being used.
Yeah, so a lot of the things that I heard and read is, instead of laying off, they said you must upskill the people in your organization. So, in your experience, how do you convince the executive team or the top management team to just upskill? Because we know that behind their backs, they are thinking about AI in terms of getting less people because it's more efficient. We have less overhead and we have more control over the output or for the output of the system. What do you think? How would you say upskilling is the answer to that dilemma?
Well, first and foremost, it is the answer, but the thing is it starts at the top. I'm a big believer in never asking anybody to do anything you're not willing to do yourself. And, Marshall Goldsmith has a great saying. He's a good, big-time leadership coach. And he says, what got you here won't get you there. And the problem with leaders is they think they know it all. Not all of them, but a lot of these executives think that they've arrived, right? And that because they're in the role that they're in, they no longer need to learn and grow. Well, that's the problem. AI is forcing leaders to grow up as well, and they have to upskill because they might not need to necessarily be experts in AI, but they need to know a little bit about the technology so that they can have conversations with their IT department and those type of individuals who are more technical in the terms. So first and foremost, the leaders need to be the ones upscaling and upskilling, making sure they're in line. And one of the biggest ones is going back to my human advantage framework and the soft skills. They need to be better, and a lot of different things. Emotional intelligence is a big one. A part of emotional intelligence is empathy, their communication skills. They need to be great storytellers so that they can get buy-in on what's going on here. And so those are the type of things that they need to do. Now, you go to your team and say, okay, this is what I'm doing to make sure that I understand what's going on. And this is what I would like for you to do. And these are the programs that we're putting in place to allow that to happen, so that you're accommodating the need for upskilling and providing that for them through regular trainings. I mean, it doesn't have to be reinventing the wheel. It's not like you have to send your teams and your employees back for a master's degree. It's just basic training skills on things, how to work better with AI. It's collaborative skills, maybe so that we don't have our departments working within silos, that they're collaborating better, teamwork skills, leadership skills. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. And so that's what you need to do. Leaders need to upskill, and then they can help their teams upskill as well.
That's a very good point. The leaders also need something, but I don't think they have that in their mind because most of them are like more on the management side. So they will say, "No, it's not for me because it's very technical, and we know that we are doing the right thing." So you have a very good point about it. Now, in your experience with some leadership team, are they willing to learn or upskill themselves first to be able to understand why AI is good for the organization or not, and why they should be the storytellers about AI?
Willingness is a big question because, and I think it's a function of the pressure to install AI programs and get on the bandwagon faster than they're ready to go. So there's a statistic that about 77% of companies are introducing AI at some level. But the key is only about 34% of those companies are actually teaching and preparing their teams to do it. So that gap right there is the answer to your question. You've got a pretty big willingness gap because they think it's all going to happen in a vacuum, that it's just magically going to happen organically, and we're going to institute this AI system or program, and it's all going to work just perfect without any flaws. And so they need to understand that that's not going to be the case. And so that's why I mentioned just previously that it starts at the top, and these leaders need to understand that, hey, if my leadership and my organization are going to make it through this AI transition and into the future and remain solvent and successful, they're going to need to learn more and adapt. And adaptability is another one of those huge soft skills that they need. So the short answer is yes, they're willing to, but the long answer is there's probably more that aren't than are because they think it's all just going to happen.
Okay. So and also the one of the gaps that maybe that they are not seeing is AI is also learning from them, right? Whatever systems that they have, it will also learn from them. So they need to be able to understand what are the data that is, get are the data that they're getting, is it accurate or not? And right, so maybe it's 70%, 30%. We don't know if it's accuracy. So how do you address the bias when you talk about AI? Because most of them will say, okay, AI, okay, let's have that system, let's implement that without knowing that in order for you to be able to get good output, so there must be a good input too. So how do you
Correct.
address the bias?
And I'll go back to that Amazon example for the addressing the bias, because really, I think the perception amongst leaders and organizations is that AI is going to eliminate the bias. But all AI is based on the data that it's given, right? And if it's
Yes.
garbage in, garbage out,
Yes.
so to speak.
Correct.
And so if you use that example of Amazon with the resumes, they had fed it years and years worth of what resumes they'd accepted, and these just happened to be mostly male. And so because of that, the AI system started recommending mostly male employees. And they're going, what's going on here? So then they realized it and were able to fix that shift. And you see it in, well, call centers is another good example of this, where perhaps you've got a customer service and they're using chatbots, which isn't bad, but the chatbots can't feel emotion and they can't hear the tone behind a customer. And so that customer may all of a sudden feel like they're being treated unfairly or biasly because of something that's going on, because that chatbot's not trained on that. So then you have to invest the human element. People think that humans are the ones that are biased, which is true. Humans can definitely be inherently biased, but so can the AI tool based on the data that it's fed. So as we improve the data that's fed to the AI tools, the better we're going to be able to avoid the bias. But the other key is we need to involve the human element in that and make sure that the humans are involved in what's going on and making the decisions and helping to look at the data once it's been extrapolated and gathered. And that's going to help overcome that bias. You're never going to get rid of it all the way. That's just impossible, because human nature and because humans are feeding the AI data, it's going to be there. But you can certainly limit it by looking at what you're feeding your AI.
Yeah. So in right now there's a lot of talk about the burnout of the people, the employees, disengagement, and then cultural drift. These are all happening at the same time, you know, with AI transformation. So how do you think this will affect, the individuals in the organization when there are other issues in the organization and then you're going to put in, we're going to start with AI? What patterns do you see most consistently across industry that hits this tone?
I see it pretty cut and dry. You're going to have half that are going to be probably even more burnt out because the organizations are not communicating, telling good stories about what their plans are for the AI and how they plan to use the humans. So they're conveying a message of, we're going to replace you. The
Yes.
other half are going to say, you know what? No, we're going to use you and to amplify what you do and make you better. We're going to let AI help you process the data and save you hours and hours on this end. But now we need you to be able to interpret that data and say, okay, what's the best decision here to be made based on the data that we've had? And that's going to help employees have less burnout, in my opinion, because a lot of burnout comes from, I think burnout comes from two major things. One, they're overworked, or two, they don't feel valued. And so by communicating to them your plan of why you're implementing AI, they start to realize, okay, wow, this person cares about me, so I'm valued. Therefore, I'm not going to feel that burnout. And now they're going to help me use AI to improve my skills, to improve my work output. So then I don't feel the burnout as well. Then I'll be able to be a better collaborator with my team and with other departments. And so that's going to eliminate the burnout from there. And so the ones that go that direction, we're going to see a lot less burnout. The ones that say AI is it and they're not communicating their mission and vision behind that, you're going to see it increase. So burnout's going to not go away because of it. It just depends on the direction the company and organization wants to take with how they tell the story.
So from your work as a leadership architect, what separates organizations that adapt well from those that get stuck?
Well, I'm going to use your word you just said, adaptability. They need to realize that, okay, like I said, Marshall Goldsmith said earlier, what got us here, what is not going to get us there. And I used to be a franchisee for a major sandwich brand.
Mm-hmm.
And their idea of innovation was to bring back a sandwich that was popular 10 years ago. And okay, it was popular then, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work now. What got you here isn't going to get you there. And so we just need to, the organizations that are going to be successful are the ones that are willing to adapt and overcome that resilience side. If anything, COVID taught us that, is that, we need to be able to adapt and be resilient and move forward with what's there for us. And so the other side of that is we need to be preparing when it's successful for when those times do come. Because oftentimes organizations wait till the hard times come to prepare. And by that time, it's too late. So the adaptability is the key to helping organizations go forward. And then the other side of it, I would say, is they need to have a good marriage between the human component and the AI component and realize that both of those work in tandem. And we can make our organization infinitely better by using both.
Yeah. And in terms of, for example, there are two groups now when it comes to AI transformation. So there are groups that believe, like what you said, this is the bandwagon. Let's go and just, do it. And those companies who are, it's not going to work like that. It's going to be a bubble and it's not going to be more popular. Which you think is more dangerous? Going into the bandwagon right away, or those organizations like, okay, let's wait and see.
Well, let's put it this way. It's hard to set your sail if you don't know what direction you're going, right? And so if you have an organization that's simply going to implement AI for the sake of implementing it without any purpose behind it, they are setting themselves up for failure. They might see short-term success in maybe time savings, money savings. They can get rid of some employees for some things like that. But in the long term, it's not going to win for them because, again, it's all about alignment. You have got to align your AI strategy with your overall purpose and mission of your organization. And if you can't do that, then don't implement the AI. If it doesn't meet your need and align with your purpose, then it's, in my recommendation, you don't do it.
So you developed these 4 A's of AI leadership. And can you walk us through those and how leaders can apply them today?
Yeah, for sure. Awareness, adaptability, alignment, and action are those key, and awareness is simply knowing what the problem is. Okay, well, we have a problem, and maybe the problem isn't necessarily a major problem, but it's the issue of, okay, how do we implement AI effectively, or do we even need to? And if we do, what are we going to do to make it work? And are we aware enough to make it align with our overall mission and vision? So that's key number one. And then adaptability is being willing to experiment. And that's using your people, and another soft skill, listening to the organization and saying, okay, I need to trust my IT people that this is going to work. I'll use a medical example for this. I remember when my mother was ill and in the hospital, and the internist who was in there gathers everybody around every morning. And he has the nurses and the pharmacist and everybody there, and they're going over everything. And this internist knows his stuff. And he's going through all these questions, but there was one question he had. He said, now he was wondering if they could mix 2 different medications. And so he asks the pharmacist right then and there, hey, can we give him this medication with that medication? And the immediate answer was no. And he said, okay, thank you. He was trusting the pharmacist to help him make the decision. We need to do the same. These leaders need to trust their teams and help them to go. So that's the adaptability. I've kind of touched on the alignment side. Use AI to support your mission, but not distract from it. That's really what it comes down to, because you'll get going down all these little paths and you all of a sudden look around and go, what was my initial purpose behind doing this? And that becomes an issue for sure. And then action. It's not going to happen overnight. It just won't. And I always like to say and remind leaders that consistency compounds. And it's not always that big action that's going to make things happen, but those small, simple steps compounded over time that are really going to make the difference for them. So those are the 4 A's of leadership that I teach on that I feel are key.
Yeah, so you mentioned a very one critical aspect in the organization, the trust. So this is a very important, aspect to become a very high performing organization. How do you think, for example, in one case, an organization who is low trust, and then now they wanted to integrate AI, which are a lot of people are very afraid of being laid off. How would you advise one company to elevate that trust for the AI transformation and augment whatever it is that what is the gaps that are missing right now in the organization?
I love that question too. Trust is a massive one. It really is. And I would say the companies that aren't going to trust better not even try AI. It's just they're going to end up going down a rabbit hole that they don't want to go down.
Mm-hmm.
I always talk about trust, and I like to ask this question in a training. And I'll say, how many of you drove to work today? And most of them did. And I will say, how many drivers were on the road with you? And, how many is it? Hundreds, thousands, whatever, depending on where you're at, but a lot. Well, you trusted those drivers to do what they're supposed to do, to drive safely, thereby allowing you to drive safely, and you could all get to your destination safely, right?
Right.
Yes, that's the answer. So why won't you trust your employees to do the same thing? That makes them think long and hard, because leaders tend to want to gather it all in and say, okay, I'm in control. But that's a classic sign of micromanagement. And then that shows your team that you don't trust them. That leads to disengagement, and that's a slippery slope as well. So trust is key. How do you do it? You just got to know by hiring good people and getting good people on your team, and knowing that they know what your goal is to oversee, obviously, and make the ultimate decision, but trust that they're going to do the right thing and allow them to do their work. And as such, the whole organization is going to roll better as a.
Yeah, it's a very complicated, topic when it comes to trust in the organization, because a lot of the employees, most in my previous ones, when I come in, there's really, really very little trust when it comes to the HR, for example. They don't trust whatever the company is giving the message, because they see what is happening, the real score in the company, but it doesn't match what is really happening. So the communication is, this is the memo, but this is the real score. So that's a very good point from you. So you emphasize about the essential human skill, and you also mentioned about hiring the right people for the team. So which human skills are becoming more valuable, not less, in an augmented workplace, AI augmented workplace?
Storytelling is huge. And that would be a big one from a leadership standpoint, but even from a management standpoint, and even on a team, you've all got to be able to tell that story. Collaborative skills are massive. It's no longer a one-man or one-woman show. It's a collaborative effort. And we need to learn to be able to collaborate and say, hey, okay, this AI might be working for this department, but it's not for this. Why? And those teams need to be able to collaborate and figure out why. And again, that goes back to that whole silo thing before. We're not on different teams here. We're all part of the same organization. And so the collaboration is massive. Communication is just another one. And you mentioned that low trust with
Mm-hmm.
employees, and that's simply a failure of top-down flow of information and leadership. And so if they would simply communicate better from the top down and let them know what we're doing and why, that's key. I consulted an organization where I asked the leaders, what are your mission and visions? And they could tell me. But when I asked the employees, they had no clue. And so I'm like, why do you show up for work a day? well, we like it here, but they don't know what the purpose behind what they're doing. So those mission and visions need to be communicated down. Andy Stanley's a very good leadership guru. He has a podcast and a huge church in the United States, and he has a saying that says, what's written on the walls spoken in the halls?"
Mm-hmm.
And I love that because, okay, we could have this mission and vision all we want, but are we communicating that down and letting people know what we're all about? Get them on board, make them excited about what they're here for. That's key. So that's another one. And then I would put adaptability and resilience in there. I have, as part of that human advantage framework with the character and connection and creativity and cultural, I have 40 soft skills that go with them. There's 10 in each of those quadrants.
Wow.
And I've
Wow,
broken it
that's
down to those 4 intelligences. And then I've got a survey that you can do and say, okay, what's your strength and what are your weaknesses? So teams can see, okay, wow, we're lacking in creativity, or we're lacking in character, or we're lacking in connection, in those type of things. So communication is key, empathy is massive, and emotional intelligence. I think I would sum them up in those, but there's so many. It's just, if I was to sum it up in 2 words, soft skills. If you want to call it human skills
Okay.
that are necessary to make things happen. Henry Cloud has a saying that he says, there is the ability to meet the demands of reality. And we need to improve our character by increasing our soft skills so that we can meet the demands of reality. The reality right now, AI is coming at us fast.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
we need to be ready for it. And so to meet those demands, let's improve our soft skills and our human skills so that we can be better able and capable to meet that.
You mentioned about the resilience and adaptability. So how do leaders build resilience and adaptability in their teams that are tired, stressed, or fearful of technological disruption?
First, tell them, and that goes back to the, being willing to learn and experiment and having a culture of, it's okay if you mess up. Did you know, I think I've got one, the sticky note.
Mm-hmm.
The sticky note by 3M, that was made by mistake because had this policy that they allowed their employees 10% of their time a week to work on anything they wanted. And so that conveys trust for sure, right? And so in the process of that, they had an employee who accidentally made the glue that allows these to stick. And I don't think there's an office anywhere in the world that doesn't have those.
Yeah.
So adaptability and resilience, understanding that I may fail a little bit, but through experimentation, I can be better. And you're enabling your teams to experiment and not have that fear of, if you mess up, you're out of here. And so I really feel like that's the best way I can answer that question for you is to be adaptable and just know that not everything is going to work, and we're going to experiment and we're going to learn from it. And that's part of the resilience.
Yeah. So going in the future, for example, the organizations is already set up for AI. So what does trust look like in an AI-driven organization, and how the leaders can strengthen?
Trust looks like buy-in. You're going to have buy-in from the top down, and everybody's going to be rowing in the same direction. They all are on board because the purpose behind that AI strategy has been communicated. It's been aligned with their mission and vision and their overall purpose of what they're doing. And because the lower echelons understand why they're doing it, because there's been great storytelling from the leadership and the leadership has communicated their overall goals, everybody has buy-in. And as there's buy-in, they feel part of something greater, and then they trust. And so if I was to summarize, the key to trust would be, there's books written on trust and you can break it down, but one of the biggest ones I would say is buy-in.
You coined the word resonant culture shift. How is it different from traditional views of culture building?
I will get contacted by people who will say, I need leadership training or I need organizational training. But the reality is they need both. Because if one is out of alignment, so is the other. And there's a saying, Edgar Sheen in his book says that leadership and culture are two sides of the same coin. And if they're two sides of the same coin, you can't have one without the other.
Yeah.
And so this resonant cultureship is actually what I did my capstone project on for my master's degree, because I saw this huge disconnect of people thinking, well, I can fix leadership, but my culture's okay, or I can fix my culture, but my leadership is okay. That can't be farther from the truth. If there's a problem with one, there's a problem with the other, because leadership is failing to align their cultural goals and vice versa. And so I call that resonant cultureship, the alignment of leadership and culture to produce high-performance human organizations. And as we align culture and leadership, make them resonate, hence the name resonant cultureship, I wanted to combine the word culture with leadership. And that's where I got my resonant cultureship framework, so that we can help them align what they're doing, put leadership in together, make them two sides of that same coin, and help them to lead through disruption in the age of AI.
That's very powerful. That's a very good insight from you. So, what does culture drift look like in real time? Like, for example, in an organization that's very stressed out, a lot of employees, so there will be a lot of cultural drift. The culture is depleting. So, are there early warning signs leaders should watch out for?
Disengagement
Mm-hmm.
is a huge one, and I'll go back to that financial services company that I'd helped. The people who'd been there from the beginning understood what the mission and vision and the overall purpose of the organization was. But because of failure to communicate that down the line, as we hired more employees and this company began to grow, that mission and vision was not being communicated. And therefore, you had a situation where the ones that had just been hired had no idea what the organization was about. That's the cultural drift, or the cultural gap. The culture drifted so far from its original origin that nobody knew what they were even doing anymore. And it was all because of failure to communicate what their overall purpose was. I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's clear. So, for me, for example, in my years of experience, I usually come into an organization that are less structured. So, I come in, and then they try to fix all these things and bring chaos into stability. So, if a leader, for example, has inherited a struggling culture, what are the first 2 to 3 steps you recommend?
Wow. Cultural change is massive, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would think the first step that a leader is going to need to do is listen. And he or she needs to listen to what's going on within the organization and get an idea of where the disconnects are, where those gaps are, where the drift is. Start to listen to what's going on rather than coming in with a preconceived notion of what they think is going to work to bring this cultural alignment back. They need to listen first and foremost. Once they listen, step number 2 would be to develop a strategy around, okay, this is what I'm hearing, and this is what we need to do. So what kind of strategy can we create to align those two things together? And then number 3 is to communicate that through great storytelling and be very compelling in your reasons. Say, okay, I came in and I listened to what was going on and I heard you. And as a result, these are the strategies at your recommendations that we came up with. Therefore, this is what we're going to do to make that happen. And if we do this, our culture is going to be aligned in such a way that we're going to be successful well into the future. How does an employee not buy into that? Because 1, they felt listened to. 2, they participated in what the recommendations were. And 3, they were told what was going to happen. And boom, it went forward just great.
Yeah, you mentioned about a while ago about Simon Sinek, right? So I have this very favorite story from him about Nelson Mandela. When he was a kid in their village, his father was the leader, and then every time they have this meeting, they come in circles. So each one of the village leaders will speak, and his father will always be the last to speak. So I really believe in that, So I think leaders should, speak last and then lead first and then listen more. So I think listening more is the one of the things that very, what do you call this, always in the culture engagement, but I think it's the less used because most of the managers, they always say, okay, do this, do this, do this. So whenever I come into organization, I usually do this and I usually observe this. I was being misjudged because during the meeting, I seldom, in the first few weeks, I seldom, give my opinion. I always ask questions and I always speak last. And then I think, why is he not, contributing to our discussion? And they didn't know that was what I learned over the years, that in order for you to gain trust from the people or for your direct reports, they have to be able to speak. They have to be able to have a safe, a psychological safety platform for everyone, that whether they're talking about the real score or whether they made a mistake, that they're not going to be blamed for that. And that is very powerful for me. So listening is very important to be able to elevate the trust. And I think from there, the culture will at least start,
Yes.
changing with that. So I always tell this to ask this to my direct reports whenever I come to an organization. I always ask them, what will make you excited to go to work? Because whenever I always see that most people, when I come in, they're okay, I'm in the computer and this, and then go. And some of them, because I usually greet in the morning. So whatever my mood is, I always say, okay, I have to have a positive, positive vibe for people. So even if I don't know anyone, I just say, hey, good morning. And initially, most of these people that I see, they avoid me. So is this guy? He's a new guy. Why is he? And then eventually after 3 or 4 times, even if they're not responding to me, I'll just say, okay. Then they start, saying hi, they start smiling, they start doing small talks. So I think it's also part of the leaders and the managers to be able to reach out to their direct reports or whoever in the organization, even it's janitor, cleaner. You have to be able, to be able to reach out and say, that manager is so cool, or that manager is very approachable. So these are the things that, could elevate the culture. What do you think about it? Is it the same for you, or have you ever experienced these things also?
Oh, yes, I agree with you 100%. It's, I think, and your example of Nelson Mandela, I think, in fact, Simon Sinek's book, Leaders Eat Last, is based off of that story of, we're the ones to listen and talk last. All the examples you gave are perfect examples of building a strong culture. Even Home Depot's prior CEO was known for spending Sundays writing thank you notes to employees. And he has thousands of employees. He couldn't possibly meet them all, but he heard things that were going on and would send a thank you note. Now, do you think if you were an employee of a big, major Fortune 500 company and you received a thank you note from the CEO of that company, that would mean something to you? That's culture building. It certainly is. Whereas if you're telling somebody that you'll listen to what they say, so then when you go in and give them your opinion and they tell you, well, you're disagreeing with me and I don't appreciate that, then that doesn't convey trust and that's not culture building. And I've seen that happen as well. So all of those little things, and I mentioned action, consistency compounds, make a huge difference in building cultures that last.
So you've coached leaders across sectors, including healthcare. So what lessons from high pressure environment apply universally today?
We used to own a quick service restaurant called Cold Stone Creamery. And it was a lot of...
Really?
Yes.
Cold Stone? That's
Yes.
one that's just, throwing the ice cream, right? Yeah, I like that. I like that.
That's the one. And we had very busy evenings a lot. And it would get high pressured. And so one of the biggest things we used to tell is never let them see you sweat. It's put on a happy face. Everything's going to work out. And if there's a line to the door, that's what you want, because that's what's paying the bills, and be happy about it and just be excited that they're there and that you're there to serve them. So a key to that is never let them see you sweat. It's just, it is what it is. And our direct reports, whoever you're referring to, they see and watch very closely. And I also talk a lot about in my training the difference between being proactive and reactive. And that's part of that never let them see you sweat. Well, I have two choices here. I can react and go off the handle, and my employees are going to see that I have a very uneven temperament and easily provoked. Or I can be proactive and say, okay, it's really busy, but we're going to make the most of this. We might be down an employee, but we're going to put on a happy face and have a great time with it and see what we can do to get through it versus throw our arms up and say we're done. And, it's never too late to jump up and just say, hey, we're excited to be here. We're not going to let them see us sweat. We're having fun and we're working through.
I've been talking to the management currently in my organization, that even my direct reports, that the dynamics of leadership already changed because of the different generations. So before, authoritative is very good. Okay, you do this, you do that. Right now, it's very dynamic. So you have to be able to communicate across generations. Right? You have to be able to communicate across generations. So looking ahead for 3 to 5 years, what shifts in leadership will be absolutely non-negotiable?
That we need to adapt in real time because technology is advancing so quickly that if we don't adapt in real time, we're going to get left behind. And that, I think, would be one of the biggest ones there. I'm trying to think if anything else really comes to my mind with that, other than, again, AI forces us to grow up and leaders to grow up as well. But just to be adapt in real time, and we can adapt better by being better prepared, upskilling, educating ourselves, and always, always, always using the human advantage skills that are necessary, that we're connecting and being creative and all of those things that are necessary, bringing out the soft skills that will allow us to thrive in an AI world. Because otherwise, we're just going to be left behind, and the ones that are able to adapt and integrate AI with the human element are going to be the ones that are successful.
So for the leaders who are listening right now, who are burnt out themselves, where they should begin? How do they come out, out of the burnout?
I'll go to Stephen R. Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, where he said, begin with the end in mind. If we don't know where we're going back to my reference earlier about setting our sail, then we don't know how to get there. So it's defining clear goals and setting that mission and vision. That's where you start. And okay, this is what I want to do. And in an AI world, you look at yourself and you say, okay, what is it that I can do to complement what AI is already doing? What human skills can I bring to the table to make this better? And what can we do to work as a team? How is AI going to work with me to be a better team?
Yeah, banking onto that you said about Stephen Covey. So I just attended this seminar conducted by Franklin and Covey. So they have this one speaker from Google, and then this guy said that 30% of their coding are already being done by AI. And that is one thing that that I was surprised, because nobody knows about it, because they are, he is the insider and he told us it's 30% now. Imagine in the future, right? So on all of this fearfulness about AI, what gives you the most optimism about the future of work, despite all the disruption?
Humans are not being replaced. That we're always going to be needed. It's just going to be required that we know a little bit more and are able to be more adaptive to what's going on. What got us here to this job isn't going to get us there in this new AI world. And so what minor adjustments do I need to make? What minor skills do I need to learn so that I can survive in this world? Humans are not going away. You've seen the movies and the AI and the fear-mongering going on out there that AI is going to replace the world and it's going to be, the end of the world as we know it. And,
Yeah.
it is scary. But the humans are always going to need to be involved. We just need to be able to adapt and learn on the fly.
Yeah. So if you could rewrite one common leadership assumption for the AI era, what would it be?
That AI is not going to replace us.
Yeah, that's a very good message. That's
It's
a very good
going
message.
to, we need to allow it to augment what we do, but not replace what we do.
That's nice for our viewers and listeners. So we are safe, right? We are safe. At least we have to have that upskilling that you're saying. It's a very good, last question. So we're now going to the final punch, the 10x fast fire round. So I'm going to ask you 10 questions about AI and how you integrate it into your life. So my first question, what's one tool, AI tool that you can you actually use every day?
ChatGTP.
Okay.
All the time. It's a thinking partner that never tires.
Okay. What one task AI has already 10x'd in your life?
Research and idea refinement, without a doubt. I mean, just from I have an idea and I'll say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Boom. And it helps me really kind of come up with some things that I wouldn't have come up with. So it's great.
Wow. As what's one human skill AI can never replace?
Character.
If you could automate one annoying thing forever, what would it be?
Administrative noise. Scheduling, sorting, inbox chaos, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I know. I understand you, especially, there's so many emails that you have to read, and then there are also Teams chat, direct chat, there's also team group chat, so many things, right? And you have to schedule all those meetings. So I understand that. What's the biggest misconception about AI right now?
That intelligence equals wisdom. AI has knowledge, but humans have judgment. AI isn't wise, it's knowledgeable.
Okay.
We need to be able to use our wisdom.
Okay, that's nice. What advice would you give someone who wants to become 10x of himself or herself starting today?
Perhaps the capacity to think, not just work.
Yeah, correct. I think that is one critical part because a lot of, I don't know if it's generational. So most people now, they're just, just less of thinking, just being like a robot every day. I think it's time for people now, for employees to start, have this critical thinking and not just being just there on their desk doing their job, the daily task, and also add some value into their scope of responsibility. Okay,
And
so
it's a slippery slope there too, because you could allow AI to think for you and, let it do the mundane tasks, which is okay. But at the end of the day, you still need to be able to do the critical thinking to decide what to do with the data that it gives you.
correct. So what would you tell your younger self about the future?
That the world changes, but principles don't.
That's nice.
So
That's
that
good.
goes back to my character thing. So continue to build your character.
What's one book, podcast, or resource that shaped your thinking about AI or innovation?
The book it's not necessarily about AI, but there's a book by Andy Andrews called The Traveler's Gift that has changed my thinking about everything from leadership to culture. It's taught me to be resilient, to seek wisdom and take action and persist without exception. And so it's applicable to AI because we need to be resilient, we need to take action, and we need to persist without exception.
Great. So if you have to bet on one AI trend that will be massive in 3 years, what is it?
AI guided personal leadership coaching. I could see that
Nice.
coming. In fact,
Really?
I'm working on some of that right now where you could put in, your tools, my tools, and provide AI chatbots around that type of thinking.
Nice. That's good. Okay, in one sentence, what does 10x mean to you personally?
It's not about doing more, it's about becoming more.
Okay, that's very powerful. So thank you very much for your time. It's very insightful and very interesting topics. I learned a lot from you during our conversation. It was very meaningful for me and fruitful today. And if our viewers or listeners would want to connect with you, how would they reach you?
They can reach me on Instagram or LinkedIn or on my website, xcelspeaking.com, and that's xcelspeaking.com minus the E. It's been a pleasure to be on with you, and I want to just remind you that AI may change the world, but humans shape meaning. And that's what we need to remember, that we're the ones that create the meaning behind everything that's out there, not AI. It's never going to automate us.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
Yes.